The first thing he remembers is the sound. Not the sound of the sword. Not the rasp of steel through air or the wet, awful end of it. Not the roar of the crowd, or Arya's scream, or Sansa's strangled cry buried somewhere behind all the rest. It is fire, a roar like a forge with no smith to tend it. A great bellows wind driving through some unseen mouth, stoking coals that have never known cooling. It fills the darkness behind his eyes, presses against him as if he is a door about to burst from its hinges. Then comes the pain. Ned Stark has known pain before. Broken bones from falls in boyhood. Slices of steel in training yards. The white-hot bite of a spear point in Robert's rebellion. The slow ache of old wounds when winter settled deep into the stones of Winterfell. This is not that. This is pain that has no beginning and no edge, that lives in every thought. His neck is a cleaved log forced back together, splinters grinding. His lungs are bellows filled with coals and ash. His heart is a coal hammered flat and then struck again. He tries to draw breath and swallows fire. He tries to open his eyes and finds they are already open. A vaulted stone ceiling swims into focus above him, blackened with soot. The air reeks of smoke and old blood, tallow candles and damp earth. Dim orange light flickers across carved faces hacked half away. The broken visages of gods he does not know. A voice is speaking over him, thick with a foreign drawl, the syllables running together as if wine has soaked them before they can leave the tongue. Lord of light, look down in your grace, for we have given what we had. Take this life and kindle it in another. The work is not done. The false kings still strut. The good men lie in graves. Bring him back, your servant of justice. Bring him back to finish what was begun. Hands press against his chest, his forehead, his throat. He feels each touch as if through bandages of flame. Ned's fingers twitch. His tongue is a lump of leather in his mouth. He tries to speak and only ash comes out. There is another voice, rasping and low. Thuras. He moved. A trick, someone answers. The dead twitch. I've seen it myself. We should not have meddled. There's enough trouble in the realm without raising corpses. He is no corpse, the first insists. Not if the Lord wills it. Ned turns his head. The motion sends a bolt of agony from the stump of his neck down his spine. He grunts without meaning to a raw animal sound. The faces above him draw sharp. A big-bellied man in singed red robes kneels at his side. His hair and beard both thinning and wild. His eyes round with fear and hope. A red crystal hangs at his throat, glowing faintly as if it remembers something brighter. Beside him stands a man Ned dimly knows from another life. Hard cheekbones, the ruined weeping wound along his scalp, the eye patch, the battered mail. Beric Dondarrion, or the ghost of him. The banners of lightning and justice come back to Ned in a rush. The young Lord Robert sent riding with 100 men to bring Gregor Clegane to heal. Robert. The name is a knife. Ned tries to sit up. Hands catch his shoulders, his chest. Every touch sparks a line of fire under his skin. Easy, my lord. Thuras of Myr says, breath sour with wine and smoke. Easy now. The Lord of Light is not done with you yet. Lord of what? Each word is dragged out like a stone from mud. His own voice sounds wrong in his ears, rougher and hollow, as if it has been sleeping a long time. The Lord of Light, Thuras repeats, as if that answers anything. Lawler, who walks in the flame. He has brought you back to us. Ned stares at him. Every part of him is wrong. His body feels too light, as if meat has been stripped away. His skin is tight over bones that twitch with remembered frost. His throat, he reaches for it without thinking. His fingers find a ring of rough, puckered flesh, jagged as torn cloth. A thick scar runs from ear to ear, ridged and ugly, like the charred edge of meat left too long over a fire. Memory crashes over him then. The black steps of the great September of Baelor. The crowds roar. Joffrey's shrill, delighted cruelty. The sword rising. The sound it made coming down. They cut off my head. He says, astonished, as if he is telling them news. I remember the sword. You died, Beric says quietly. His voice is a rasp of torn leather, tired but steady. You died in the capital, Lord Stark. We heard. All the realm heard. The words are simple, but they fall like stones into Ned's chest. So it had not been some nightmare, some fevered dream in a dungeon. He had died. He had felt the world fall away, the cold, the nothing. How, he asks, am I here? Thuras looks at the burned faces of the hacked idols around them. Half of the statues are of the Seven, their features melted by fire. Others are stranger, older. A man with leaves for hair, a woman with antlers. They are all blackened. In the Riverlands, Thuras says, we saw so much killing, so many lies. Good men hung, bad men raised up. I drank and I prayed, and I thought the Lord had turned his face from me until he gave me Beric back. Again and again. His voice softens. He gave us a sign that justice is not done while liars walk living. Beric's one good eye meets Ned's. There is something in it that Ned recognizes from the mirror of still water on a winter day. The acceptance of a man who knows he has nothing left but duty. This is the last of me, Beric says. The last spark. The Red Priest saw you in his flames. Saw your bones on a wagon bound north with the Silent Sisters. Saw wolves in the snow. Saw a sword in the dark. He touches his chest lightly. I took an arrow at the ford 2 nights past. It should have finished me. Thuras asked the fire for one more miracle. I gave him all I had. For you. Ned blinks. His eyes sting. He does not know if it is from smoke or something deeper. Why? He asks. Because, Beric says, a hint of humor in his ruined face. This all began with you, my lord, with a hand who cared to send a man after a monster, with a king who listened once and then stopped. Because the realm is rotten with men who broke faith, and you are Eddard Stark, who did not. Ned tastes bitterness on his tongue. My honor did not save my king. It did not save my men. It did not save my daughters. The names are on him before he can stop them. Sansa, Arya, Robb, Bran, Rickon, Catelyn, Winterfell. Each is a blade drawn along his heart. What of them? He demands, sudden urgency burning through the fog. He tries to push himself up again. The world reels but holds. What of my family? The North? Thuras hesitates. Beric's lips thin. My lord, the outlaw says, you have been dead near 2 years. 2 years. The words strike harder than any sword. The boy Robb raised the banners. Beric goes on quietly. There is reverence in his tone when he speaks Robb's name. They called him the young wolf, king in the north. He cut through the lion's hosts, took the Kingslayer captive, broke their armies. For a time, it seemed the Starks would have justice. For a time, Ned repeats, feeling something cold starting in his bones that even the fire cannot melt. And then, Beric looks to Thuras as if the priest might drink the truth away for him. But the bottle at Thuras's belt is empty, the skin dry. And then, Beric says, your vassals betrayed him. Walder Frey and Roose Bolton broke guest right, slaughtered him and his men with swords and bolts at a feast. His head. They say they sewed the head of his direwolf to his body and paraded it on the walls of the twins. The cold inside Ned meets the heat and something cracks. Robb, laughing on a frosted morning as a boy, snow in his hair. Robb accepting the sword at his knighthood. Robb promising to look after his brothers if Ned did not return from the south. All of it explodes behind Ned's eyes into red light, and for a heartbeat the room is gone and all he sees is a hall full of frays. Torches dripping fat, Roose Bolton's colorless gaze, crossbow strings snapping in rhythm like a butcher's song. He realizes only slowly that his hands are burning. Actual flames lick along his fingers, pale orange at first and then red, hungry. They do not consume his flesh. They do not hurt him. They just are. The air tightens. The hacked idols seem to recoil. Thuras falls back on his haunches, eyes wide. Do you see? He whispers hoarsely. Do you see? The Lord's favor. Ned stares at his own hands, stunned. The fire gutters and goes out, leaving only faint red marks on his skin like old brands. "My wife?" he asks, voice raw. "Caitlin?" Barrick's mouth twists, as if the words taste sour. "She was at the feast. They say she died screaming for her son with her throat cut. Some claim her ghost stalks the riverlands now, hanging frays from trees. I have not seen it myself. Perhaps those are only tales. The small folk always make new ghosts for old wrongs." Ned closes his eyes. He had imagined death as a falling away into stillness, a long snow that muffled pain and noise, where the old gods whispered in the rustle of leaves. Instead, he had known nothing, not even dream. And now, when he returns, the world is worse and emptier. A wife with her throat torn, a son with a wolf's head, his girls scattered or dead, his home burned. Why, he thinks, would any god bring me back to this? Because justice is not done. The thought does not feel like his own. It comes with the taste of smoke and iron. When he opens his eyes, the air above him trembles, heat in a place that cannot harbor such warmth. The red crystal at Thuris's throat glows brighter, reflecting in soot and ash. "Your girls," Barrick says. "One is said to be wed to the imp in King's Landing. The other vanished. Some say she's dead. Some say she's with outlaws. Some say she's no one at all now, just a whisper with a sword." There is a faint note of grim amusement at that last. Ned clings to it because the alternative is to drown. "Sansa," he says, croaking. "Arya." He remembers Sansa's wide, terrified eyes at the sept, Arya's small hand slipping from his as the crowd surged. "Living, dead, you are not sure. There are too many lies in this war for any man to be sure of much," Barrick says. "But the North remembers. The Riverlands remember. The small folk speak of wolves in the dark and banners rising in secret. Your name has not gone out of the world, Lord Stark. Perhaps that is why he brought you back." "He," Ned says slowly, feeling the scar at his neck burn under his fingertips. "You're Lord of Light. Why should a foreign god care for the honor of Winterfell?" Thuris laughs once, a short bark with no joy in it. "He does not care for honor. He cares for victory, for fire over night, for truth over shadow. Perhaps he saw you as a tool to that end. Or perhaps," he adds, eyes narrowing as he looks at Ned, "he saw in you a flame you never knew you carried." Ned thinks of the heart tree in Winterfell's Godswood, its red eyes watching him as a boy, as a man, as a father. He thinks of kneeling there to say farewells before the King's Road, the weight of snow on the branches. He had always thought the old gods were silent, but he had felt something watching, listening. Now he feels watched again. But it is not the cool, patient regard of the weirwood. It is something hotter and hungrier, something that beats in time with his heart. "Fire is a cruel judge," he says. "Fire is a true judge," Thuris counters. "Shadows lie, but light shows all. It shows what it touches," Ned says quietly. "It burns the rest to ash." Barrick Dondarrion chuckles weakly. "You are still a hard man to convince, my lord, even after dying." "Death has not made me less a Stark," Ned replies, surprising himself with how steady his voice is. "If your god has given me a second life, he will learn that." He NGS his legs over the side of the bier. They look thinner than he remembers, the hairs along them singed. His feet find cold stone. For a moment his vision goes gray around the edges, and he sways. Barrick's hand is on his elbow, calloused and firm, steadying him. Thuris makes a sign over his own heart with singed fingers. "Where do you mean to go?" the Red Priest asks. Ned looks past them to the open doorway. Beyond it he can see only darkness and a sliver of night sky, a single winking star. "Home," he says. The word tastes like blood and snow. "If there is any left." Barrick's eye softens. "The twins stand between you and the north. The Freys sit fat on their stone bridge, gorged on Stark blood. They would piss themselves to see your ghost at their gate." "Then I will not knock," Ned says. His hand goes to where ice used to hang, as it always did in his memory. He finds nothing there but empty air and the ache of absence. The great Valyrian blade was taken, he remembers, broken on a Lannister's whim to make new swords for new knights. The thought is another coal in his chest. If I cannot reclaim my sword, he says, I will borrow another. Beric's mouth quirks. We have steel enough, if not as fine. And we have men. Not as many as we had once, but enough to harry, to bleed, to judge. He gestures to the shadows beyond the door. Figures move there. Men in piecemeal armor, with half a dozen different sigils sewn over old ones. Archers with patched quivers. A boy with a striped cat curled about his shoulders. The Brotherhood without banners. The realm's ghosts gone to ground. Ned feels their eyes on him. Some of them he recognizes from Winterfell's halls long ago, from the banners of houses that once bent the knee to the Starks. Others are strangers, brown-faced Riverlanders, grim-faced men who have seen too much war. A red-headed woman in mail leans on a spear, her gaze keen. A big bearded man, Lem by the look of him, chews on something and watches Ned like a man waiting to see if a tale is true. They begin to kneel. Don't, Ned says sharply. The word comes rough, but it carries. They freeze. I am no king. I was Lord of Winterfell once and Warden of the North. I was Hand of the King. Now I am what I am. Whatever that is, I will discover on my feet, not on my knees. Beric's eye glitters with something like respect. Thoros mutters a prayer under his breath. Standing it is, then, Beric says. We can stand together if you'll have us. Ned looks past them to the hacked gods. Half-burned faces stare down at him. The mother with her features melted, the father with his scales cracked, the warrior missing an arm. Between them, barely spared from the fire, is an older carving of a man's face with deep-set eyes and a long, sorrowful mouth, leaves etched where hair should be. Winterfell's heart tree flickers over that image in his mind. Its white bark, its blood-red sap. I will not burn the gods of my fathers, Ned says. Thoros shifts uneasily. The Lord of Light is the true. If your God wished to keep me, he should have left me dead, Ned interrupts. He sent me back into a world where the old gods still have roots, whatever fires you set at their feet. I will use what I must to protect my children, my people, this land. But I will not kneel to a foreign flame and call it my master. The air seems to tighten. The red crystal at Thoros's throat throbs once, like a heartbeat. For a moment, the candles around the room flare higher, their flames leaning toward Ned as if in curiosity. Then they gutter back to normal. Thoros lets out a breath he might have been holding. Your tongue will get you burned one day, my lord, he says, though perhaps that is redundant. Ned almost smiles. Almost. We have work to do, he says instead. They move. The hideout, a ruined sept on some nameless rise in the Riverlands, is emptied of its few comforts with the practiced speed of men who have been forced to move often. Horses are brought, swords belted on, quivers filled. Someone presses a plain long sword into Ned's hand, its edge well kept if unlovely. He tests its balance, feels the pull of unfamiliar steel. It is lighter than ice, a narrow blade where his old one was a great slab of dark metal. Ice was broken, Beric says quietly, seeing his look as well as if Ned had spoken the thought aloud. Forged into 2 new toys for the lions. But a sword's worth is not in the name they give it. Ned says. It is in the man who wields it, and what he chooses to cut. When he steps out into the night, the air hits him like a slap. It is colder than the stale heat of the sept, but still too warm for his bones. The sky is cloudy, the moon a thin silver smear behind rags of cloud. Stars blink through in tattered lines. He had expected to feel strange under open sky. Instead he feels watched, not only by men. Heat presses at his back where the sept's burned gods stand. Ahead, the dark tangle of trees along the river's bank looms, leaves rustling in a wind that does not touch his face. The hairs on his arms rise. He pauses, caught between the pull of fire and the call of leaves. If this is a game between gods, he murmurs, so low no one else can hear, I will not be a peace. The wind answers with a sigh through branches. A distant owl hoots once. Somewhere behind him, within the ruined sept, a candle pops and goes out. He mounts anyway. They ride by night like outlaws because they are. The Riverlands have learned to fear any banner, any column of armed men, and that suits the Brotherhood well. They move along cattle tracks and hunters' paths, avoiding main roads. Thuras mutters his prayers softly beside the campfires when they dare light them, staring into flickers of orange as if the flames tell him secrets. The others talk in low voices of raids and rescues, of men hanged and spared, of small victories against bigger evils. Ned listens and judges. The first village they come to is not on any map he knows. It is a cluster of sod-roofed huts and a half-burned mill beside a thin, muddy stream. The people there are gaunt, their cheeks hollows, their eyes ringed with shadow. They watch the riders with the dull resignation of folk who have seen too many men with swords already. Lem Lemoncloak, Lem as they call him, rides ahead with Angui and a few others, hands empty and open. He calls out that they mean no harm, that they are the Brotherhood without banners, that they've come to see justice done. Justice? A woman spits from the doorway of a hut. Her hands are white-knuckled on the frame. We've had justice. The lions burned our fields when we fed the wolves. The wolves took our sons when they passed through next, said it was for honor. The phrase came after and took what was left. If that's justice, keep it. We take no sons, Lem says gruffly. We take no food we don't pay for. We take only from those who spilled blood on the Trident and at the Twins. And what good does hanging a few soldiers do when lords sit warm in their halls? The woman demands. It is a fair question. Ned dismounts. When he swings down, he does it carefully, because his body still seems to remember death. His knees are stiff, his spine a stack of iron rods one misplaced step might snap. He walks to the woman's door, the villager's eyes following him, and lifts the sword from his hip. Too many eyes widen. Someone mutters, "It is him." Under their breath, voice trembling. Ned ignores it. He plants the sword point down in the packed earth and leans both hands atop the pommel. "I was a lord once," he says. His voice carries in the chill morning air. "I sat a high seat, and men came to me with their quarrels. I judged them as best I could. Perhaps not always rightly. Perhaps not always kindly. But I did not kill for sport, and I did not break guest right, and I did not murder in the shadows and call it law." The woman's mouth twists. "And yet you kept a king who did those things." "I kept a friend," Ned says, and the word hurts. "I failed to see when he stopped being the man I knew. I failed to stop the men who came after him. I failed many things." He looks around, taking in the burned mill, the empty pigsties, the hollow faces. "There is no justice that will bring back what you have lost," he says. "There is no hanging that will fill your bellies. But there are men who profited by your suffering, lords who grew fat while you starved, kings who sent wolves and lions to hunt in your fields as if you were not worth the bread you baked. I cannot mend what they broke, but I can see that they do not break others again." "And who are you to do that?" someone calls skeptically from the back. "Another lord with another sword?" Ned pulls the sword from the earth. "I am Eddard Stark," he says. "I was Lord of Winterfell and Hand of the King. I was executed on the steps of the Great September for telling the truth. If the gods have put breath back in me, I mean to use it to see that men who lie and murder in the name of crowns feel what I felt." The words hang there. The villagers stare. He does not tell them that he feels the heat in his veins even as he speaks, a pulse that is not his own. He does not tell them that when he looks at some of them, the air around their heads is haloed faintly red, and when he looks at others, it is not. Nor does he tell them that a part of him, the part that burned in Thuras's flames, wants very much to drag every Fry and Bolton into a ring of fire to watch what color their souls burn. That part he keeps on a short leash. "Your justice won't fill our bellies," the woman says again, but her voice has changed. It is less mocking, more weary. "What will you give us, Eddard Stark?" "Bread," Ned says. "For a start." We have stores enough to share. After that, we will take from those who have too much to give to those who have too little. If you'll stand with us, we'll stand with you. The promise is dangerous. Any lord would call it treasonous. He makes it anyway. The days that follow bleed together. Rides through ruined fields, nights under trees, quick skirmishes with Fry outriders and lion men who think the Riverlands still belong to them. Ned's sword finds necks and bellies. His hands learn again the familiar weight of steel, the angles of parry and thrust. But each time he steps into a fight, the heat rises faster now. The first time a man lies to his face, one of the Fry undercaptains, protesting that he had nothing to do with the slaughter at the Twins, that he only kept the peace. Ned feels the lie like a slap. The fire in him flares. Flames lick along his blade. For a heartbeat, the steel itself glows dull red. The Frey's eyes go wide. He falls to his knees, babbling, confessing more than Ned had asked for. Names spill from him: Blackwalder, Ryman, Lothar. Details of bolts fired into mouths already open to drink, of knives at throats, of music played to drown out screams. When it is done, when the man hangs from an ash tree, his confession wrung not only by fear but by something deeper. Ned stands beneath him with Beric at his side. That was lawless work, Thuras says quietly, awed. No man can fake that heat. The fire shows lies. Or it burns men too much for their tongues to keep secrets, Ned says. His own throat is dry. The smell of the hanged man's piss and fear mixes with the faint char on the rope where his skin had touched it. Truth is truth, Thuras says. If the fire must bite to bring it out, so be it. Ned looks at the Red Priest, at his singed hair and earnest eyes. And if the fire bites the wrong man? Thuras flinches. He looks away. We are only men, he says. We do what we can. Only men, Ned thinks. And I am no longer only that. In the quiet hours by the embers of their campfires, he sits apart, the sword across his knees, and stares into what remains of the flames. Sometimes he sees nothing but char and co. Sometimes the coals breathe, and he sees faces. Rob smiling, then bleeding out onto a stone floor. Caitlin with her hair wild, her throat red. Sansa with tear-swollen eyes, kneeling in a queen's shadow. Arya with a sword in her hand in some foreign street, her face blank-eyed and strange. Bran in the snow beneath an ancient tree, eyes milky white and far away. Jon upon the wall, black cloak whipping in the wind, his hand on a sword that breathes mist. Beyond them, in every vision, there is always the same thing at the edge. A wall of night and cold, eyes like blue stars staring from within. The first time he sees those eyes, Ned jerks back, heart pounding. The fire spits. Thuras looks up sharply from his own mutterings. You saw something, the Red Priest says, urgent. Tell me. Ned licks his lips. The image clings to the back of his eyes. It is worse than any Lannister he has ever faced, worse than any dishonor or betrayal, because it is not personal. It is simply hunger. The North, he says. The Wall. There's something coming. Something that should not be. Darkness. Thuras breathes. The Great Other. We have seen signs. Cold in summer. Ravens falling dead. You saw it in the flame. I saw my son, Ned says. Jon. On the wall. And eyes in the dark beyond him. Thuras's face lights with fervor. Then it is true. The prince that was promised. The one who will stand against the night. Ned's jaw tightens. Do not twist my son into your prophecies. He is a boy who took the black, he says. Not some savior for your foreign god. The Lord of Light is not foreign to darkness, Thuras says sharply. All things that live do so by his flame. And your boy, our boy... Ned cuts in before he can stop himself, surprised at the possessive. Has a life of his own. He is not a blade to be swung by some priest. I have seen enough of that. Thuras opens his mouth, shuts it again. He studies Ned's face in the dim glow, seeing not just the scar at his neck, but the lines etched there by years of stubbornness. You speak like a man who has argued with gods before. he says at last. I speak like a man who knelt in a snow-covered grove and asked the old gods for guidance and heard only his own breath, Ned replies. If your Lord of Light wants my service, he will have to contend with them. He feels foolish as soon as he says it, like a boy boasting that his father is stronger than another's. And yet, sitting there between dying embers and rustling trees, between a foreign priest and the memory of a heart tree's silent face, he cannot shake the sense that he has stepped into a quarrel older than any kingdom's squabbles. He lies awake long into the night, listening to men snore and horses shift in their sleep. The stars move overhead. The scar at his neck itches, the flesh there constantly too tight. When he finally sleeps, he dreams of roots and fire. In his dream, Winterfell's heart tree stands in the middle of a black lake. Its branches are aflame but do not burn away. Its carved face weeps tears of sap that hiss and turn to steam when they touch the water, raising a shroud of white mist. Beneath the surface, eyes glow blue. Choose. A voice says that is not a voice, a rustle, a crackle, root or flame. Ned reaches toward the tree and finds his hand is already on fire. He wakes with his sword in his hand and the camp around him still sleeping. The choice follows him. Word spreads. The Riverlands seem to have their own way of carrying tales, faster than any raven on clear wings. By the time the Brotherhood strikes at a Fry supply caravan on the east bank of the Green Fork, the men driving the wagons are already whispering about the ghost of Winterfell. Tall as a tower, they say. One mutters to another as they water their horses. Scar about his neck like he was half-hanged and still angry about it. Eyes like embers. Bah! His companion says. I heard he's a white, dead man walking. Fire can't hurt him. Swords can't bite him. Best thing is to run if you see him. Run where? The first asks bitterly, looking up at the looming bulk of the twins in the distance. Into the river? Ned watches them from the shade of a willow, hidden, hearing his own death retold in strangers' mouths. Ghost, white, burn judge. None of them fit and all of them do. In the skirmish that follows, when steel rings on steel and men shout and horses scream, he finds himself face to face with another Fry who swears he had no part in the Red Wedding. You think every Fry there loosed a bolt? The man snarls, backing away as Ned advances. You think every man and boy at that feast chose it? It was the old man and the Boltons and their close lickspittles, that's all. The sword in Ned's hand feels heavy with more than steel. He wants to believe him. He also wants very much to carve down every man with a leaping trout and 2 towers on his surcoat until the stones of that cursed bridge run red. Instead, he reaches for the fire. Comes easier now. A thought, a breath, and the veins in his wrist glow faintly, heat racing to his fingertips. The air around the Fry shimmers. Look at me, Ned says. The Fry does, defiant, sweat beading on his brow despite the coolness of the day. Were you there? I served wine, he says. I poured. I didn't loose a bolt. I didn't draw a knife. Did you know? Ned asks. When you tied the banners and set the tables. Did you know what would happen? The man's throat works. Rumors, he says. Words, that's all. They said Lord Walder meant to teach the wolf a lesson. Make him kneel. No one said slaughter. No one said. The fire flares at that. It burns hotter along Ned's skin, eager. He remembers Robb's easy grin, Catelyn's steady gaze, the way they would have welcomed even a cold peace, for the sake of their men. You poured the wine, Ned says. You heard rumors and did not leave, did not warn, did not choose another lord when the one you served spoke of lessons and wolves. What was I to do? The Fry snaps, desperate. I was born in that hall. Where else was I to go? The Freys are no different from the Starks in that. Blood is blood. The words hit like a slap. For a moment, the fire falters. Ned sees another man for an instant. Himself at Winterfell, choosing silence instead of truth when Jon looked up at him with lioness eyes. Choosing to follow Robert South rather than drag the truth into light and risk his sister's son's life. Choosing, again and again, the path that seemed least likely to spill more blood, and watching how much more blood was spilled because of it. "We are all born somewhere," Ned says quietly. "We do not choose the banners over our cradle. We do choose the ones over our heads when we have grown tall enough to walk away." The Frey's eyes shine with something that might be shame or might be hatred. It is hard to tell from this distance. Ned lowers his sword. "Go," he says. The heat in his veins snarls, but he does not feed it. "Run. Find some lord whose bread is not baked from the bones of guests. He'll tell—" Lem snarls from behind him. "He'll run right back to the twins and tell them the wolf walks. Let him," Ned says. If the Freys sleep soundly after what they have done, perhaps they deserve to wake with their sheets wet from fear. The Fry runs. Ned can feel Lem's eyes on his back like daggers. Later, by the fire, the big man grumbles. "You're too soft," Lem says, tearing at a heel of bread. The man was at that cursed feast. His hands may not have loosed a quarrel, but they poured wine into the men who did. "You think he'd have spared you if the positions were swapped?" "No," Ned admits. "Then why?" "Because justice without mercy is just another kind of knife," Ned says, more sharply than he intends. "I have seen what men become when they convince themselves everyone who might be their enemy deserves to die. They start with those who clearly do. Then they move to those who might. Then they kill anyone who does not smile wide enough." Lem snorts. "Words from a lord's mouth. From a dead man's," Ned says. "If I must carry this fire, I will not let it burn everything. The Freys will answer for what they have done. But not every man who wears their colors is the Red Wedding." He says it firm and feels the heat subside, a sulking coal pulled back from tinder. In the weeks that follow, he keeps drawing those lines. He hangs men who planned murders under guest right, who took coin to betray their oaths, who led bloody forays on helpless villages. He spares boys who stood in the wrong ranks with fear in their eyes, small folk who baked bread for armies because the choice was that or the sword. Each decision stokes or starves something inside him. Each decision feels watched. Sometimes, when he wakes in the small hours, he senses someone or something standing by his bedroll. Once, he hears the whisper of leaves, though there are none. Another time, he opens his eyes to see the embers of their fire shaped almost like a heart, two glowing eyes watching him, before a gust turns them to dull red lumps again. The Brotherhood makes their way slowly toward the Frey's holdfast, testing the edges of its defenses, cutting off carts and riders, feeding captured grain and cattle to the starving villages they pass. Tales of the burning wolf spread. Some men join them, others flee at the sight of Ned's scar. In the end, he knows there will be no easy way into the twins. It is a fortress of stone and spite, and he has no army. But then a different piece of news reaches them, carried by a peddler with quick eyes and quicker tongue. Stannis Baratheon has sailed from Dragonstone. The man says around his pipe, or so they say in the inns. They say he means to take the north. They say he's got a red witch who can see things in fire and birth shadow men from smoke. The men of the Brotherhood cross themselves in half a dozen ways at that. Thuras laughs, delighted. "Another servant of the Lord," he says. "I've heard of her, Melisandre. She rides with a king who still believes in justice and law. A hard man, they say, but hard in the right places. Hard men crack like any other," Ned says, but his mind is elsewhere. Stannis, the stiff-backed brother who had stood in Robert's shadow his whole life, who had clenched his jaw and held the line while other men drank and whored. Stannis, to whom Ned had written about Joffrey's parentage, asking him to come to King's Landing and take the throne that was rightfully his nephew's. Stannis, who never came. "Which way?" Ned asks. "Where does he go?" "North, they say," the peddler replies. "To the wall. To fight something. Wildlings. Ghosts. I don't know. Men talk too much these days. More wars than pots to piss in. The wall." The image from the flames comes back sharp. Jon with his hand on a sword, eyes narrowed against the cold wind, and beyond him, that wall of night with its dead lights. Ned's choice sharpens. He could stay here, wage a slow, grinding war of raids and hangings against the Freys and Boltons. He could take his burning justice hall by hall until men spoke his name with terror from the trident to the neck. Or he could turn north and face the eyes in the dark beyond his sun. What good will it do for me to reclaim Winterfell? He asks himself. If there is no world left to hold it, it is Beric who sees the turmoil on his face and asks that question aloud for him. One night under a half-moon. We cannot fight on every front, the scarred lord says, his one eye keen. You are only one man, Lord Stark, not 10. Even if the fire makes you more than that. I am a father, Ned says. I must go to my sons. And the men who murdered your wife and boy? Lem demands from where he sits sharpening his blade. You'd leave them comfortably behind their fat towers while you ride off chasing stories on the edge of the world? I don't ride after stories, Ned says. I ride after the cold I've seen in the flames. Lem spits into the fire. The flames, he mutters. Always the flaming flames. Beric considers him. The realm is full of wrongs, he says slowly. We have tried to right them one by one, and for every rope we knot, 2 more knots form elsewhere. But there is a wrong coming from the north that may swallow all the rest. Even Freys freeze. Even Boltons die in the dark. And you'd have us follow you to the wall? Lem asks, incredulous. I would have you choose, Ned says. You followed Beric because you believed in his cause. I will not make any man follow me into a war he does not understand. Stay and bleed the Freys if you wish. Hound the Boltons. Hunt lions. All of it needs doing. But I must go to my boy. Beric is quiet for a long moment. The firelight makes a ruin of his face, deepening every scar. In the end, he nods. I gave you my life for a reason, he says. Whatever that reason was, I feel it pulling north. Where you go, I would have gone if I had any steps left to take. The men must choose for themselves, but if it matters, Lord Stark, I would follow you. One by one, they make their choices. Some stay. Lem and Angui and a knot of hard-faced Riverlander veterans peel off to continue their private war against the Freys. I'll hang Ryman Fry for you, Lem says gruffly as they clasp forearms. When you hear the bastards choked his last, think of me. Others ride with Ned. Thuras rides, of course, his red robes flapping, his wineskin lighter than he likes. Several knights whose sigils have been burned from their tabards ride too, faces set with dogged purpose. The red-headed woman with the spear, Maris they call her, falls in beside Ned as if she has always ridden there. A dozen more men and boys, some with wolves on their shields, some with nothing but blank wood, make up the rest. The Riverlands fall away behind them. The neck rises, its bogs and reeds swallowing roads into causeways only Crannogmen know. They follow what little hard ground they can find, skirting swamps and ruined towers, sleeping in trees sometimes when the mud is too deep. In the swamps, the air feels different, thicker as if it has weight. The old gods are strong here. Ned can sense it in the way the reeds whisper at the edge of hearing, in the way mist clings to his boots. One night, standing ankle-deep in cold water beneath a stunted heart tree, he feels the fire in his veins sputter. It does not go out, cannot, not entirely, not while he breathes, but it dims, as if something older has laid a damp hand over it. "What are you?" he whispers to the carved face above him. "What have I become?" The tree does not answer. It never has. "Perhaps it is not your fire's country," Ned says. "Fire is fire," Thuras says stubbornly. "It burns everywhere, until it meets water," Ned replies. "Or stone, or roots too deep to catch." Thuras sniffs. "We shall see whose roots are deepest when the great other comes with his cold." When they finally ride out of the neck into the north proper, Ned feels something in him unclench for the first time since he woke. The air is sharper, clearer. The sky seems higher, the stars closer. Pines crowd the hills, their scent clean and biting. The frost on the ground lingers longer in the mornings. Home, a part of him says, and yet he is riding into a north that has changed without him. Houses have risen and fallen. Old oaths have been broken. Winterfell has burned and been held by men who flay their enemies for pleasure. He feels that absence like a missing tooth, his tongue constantly finding the gap where stone and hearth and familiar walls should be. Still, as they pass the first farmstead that has not been burned, and a wary, freckled-faced boy in a patched cloak peers out at them with a spear in his hand and a wolf carved roughly into the haft, Ned's chest tightens. "Who holds this land?" he calls. The boy looks them over. His eyes linger on the dire wolf on Ned's borrowed shield, on the grim line of his mouth, on the scar about his neck. "House Serwyn, lord," the boy says at last, voice almost cracking. "What's left of us?" "Serwyn were good men," Ned says. He dismounts and steps closer, his horse's breath steaming. "Do you know me, boy?" The boy squints, frowns. His gaze goes to the scar at Ned's throat, the gray in his beard, the stark features beneath the wear. "Every tale north of the neck knows you," he says slowly. "Lord Eddard Stark. But he's dead." "Dead once," Ned says. "Not twice yet." The boy's spear tip-dips. Behind him, at the door of the farmhouse, a woman steps out, wrapped in a thick cloak, her face lined by hard years. When she sees Ned, she claps a hand to her mouth. "Seven save us," she breathes. "It's true, then. The dead walk." "No," Ned says, gentler than he feels. "The dead still sleep. I am just a man who should have gone to them and didn't. The blame is not yours to carry." As they move on, word goes ahead of them like a wind. Men come out to watch them pass at crossroads. Graybeards, boys, women with babes on their hips. Some cross themselves in the ways of the seven, others in the old way, touching brow, lips, and heart. A few kneel despite his protests, tears in their eyes. "You're back," they say. "The wolf is back. The North still has a lord." "I am no lord until my people say so," Ned answers. "And even then, my son was king before. Emi, if there is oaths to be sworn, they may yet be for him." "Your son's dead," someone always whispers, and the fire in Ned's veins snaps. "His blood is not," he says, "nor is the North's." By the time the wall's shadow rises on the horizon, a vast, unnatural line of white and blue stretching from one edge of the world to the other, Ned's band has grown. Men with flayed men grudges, men who lost sons at the Twins, men who survived the sack of Winterfell, men who simply hear that a Stark walks among them and remember what it felt like to follow a man who cared whether they froze. The wall awes him as it always did, more so now with fire smoldering in his chest. It is ice in a world that is all too ready to burn. It is something solid in the face of the unseen. At its gate, the Black Brothers stand wary, hands on spears. "Halt," their sergeant calls. "Name yourselves." Thuras opens his mouth, but Ned lifts a hand. "Eddard Stark of Winterfell," he says, "and men who ride with me in the king's peace." The words feel peculiar. There is no king's peace left in the realm, only war and ragged alignments. But it is the old phrase, and it steadies him. The sergeant's face moves through disbelief to something like fear. He looks to the man beside him, a lean, dark-haired fellow whose eyes seem to take in everything at once. "Bowen," the sergeant mutters. "You see what I see?" "I see a man with Stark's face and a rope scar," Bowen Marsh says slowly. His voice is thick with the North. "I see trouble. Open the gate." The creak of the chains is familiar, as is the smell of cold stone and old wood as they pass into the enormous tunnel. The ice presses in on either side, blue and deep, as if they are riding through a frozen throat. On the far side, in the courtyard of Castle Black, men come spilling out from barracks and armory, wiping sweat from brows, pulling on cloaks. The ravens in the rookery above their heads erupt into a clamor of cause. Ned swings down before his horse has even fully stopped. His boots hit the hard-packed snow. For a heartbeat, he just stands, the cold biting up through his soles, the wall looming above him like a frozen wave. "Ned," a voice says behind him. He knows that voice. He turns. Jon Snow stands not 10 paces away, black cloak fanned around him, ghost at his side like a pale shadow. The man has grown since Ned last saw him. His shoulders are broader, his jaw has set. There is a new hardness about his eyes, a watchfulness that no child's face should carry. For a moment, neither of them moves. Then John takes a step forward. Another. The whole yard seems to hold its breath. "You died," John says quietly. Jory Castle's bastard nephew is in his face now, and Lyanna's, and something else, something foreign that he has always carried. "I saw your head on a spike above the red keep in my dreams." "I did," Ned says. His voice wants to break. He will not let it. They cut it on the steps of the Great September, and if there is any mercy, I would have stayed where I fell. But the gods, or a god, had other ideas. John stops an arm's length away. He looks at the scar about Ned's neck, at his eyes, as if hunting there for some proof that this is a trick. "You're alive," John says, and now his voice does break. Ned reaches for him. His fingers close on the rough black of his cloak and then on bone and muscle beneath. John comes into his arms like he did when he was a little boy, hot and solid and real. For the first time since he woke in the burned sept, Ned feels the fire in him do something he does not expect. It softens. Heat has always been an edge, a sharpness, a threat since he returned. But here, holding his son, it is something else too. A hearth's warmth, a remembered winter evening with children about his feet and Caitlin smiling across the rushes. "I am sorry," Ned hears himself say into John's hair, "for leaving you, for not telling you what you deserve to know. For all of it." John stiffens in his arms. Just a little. Ghost growls low in his throat. "You left because the king commanded you," John says, pulling back. "You died because you were honorable in a nest of snakes. None of that is your fault." "There are things I could have done differently," Ned says. "Things I should have done. But whatever you think, John, know that I never loved you less for the truths I kept." John's eyes search his. Snow swirls down between them. The wall looms. "I am a bastard," John says, as if daring Ned to contradict him. "You are my son," Ned answers. It is the truest thing he has ever said. Later, there will be time for more words. For truths about Lyanna and Rhaegar, perhaps, if the old gods and the new give him the strength. For now, he just lets the boy he raised see that he believes those 4 words with all that is left of his heart. Behind them, men clear their throats. A hard, precise voice cuts through the rawness of the moment like a knife. "This is touching," it says. "But the wall is not a hall for family reunions. We have a war to fight." Ned turns. Stannis Baratheon stands at the edge of the courtyard, flanked by knights in good steel and a woman in scarlet whose eyes are the color of old embers. Stannis looks much as Ned remembers. Jaw clenched, face set in the kind of permanence that comes from a life of swallowing bitterness without complaint. There is more gray in his stubble now, more lines at the corners of his mouth. But his gaze is as unyielding as ever. "Lord Stark," Stannis says. "Or should I call you something else now that you've clawed your way back from the grave?" "Lord Stark will do," Ned says evenly. "I have no other name. You have changed, Stannis." "Death changes all," Stannis says with a short shrug. "Even when it is not yours. When I heard of your execution, I thought one of the last honest men in the realm was gone. Now I find you here, defying all law and sense." He snorts softly. "It seems the gods have ally remembered their duties." The red woman steps forward, eyes fixed on Ned. There is hunger in them, but a different kind than the one he felt in the eyes beyond the wall. "Lord of Winterfell," she says. Her voice is musical and strange, with the lilting cadence of Ashai or some other far port. "You burn. I bleed too," Ned says. "That is the important part." She smiles faintly, amused. "I saw you in the flames long ago," she says. A wolf wreathed in fire, standing between 2 great shadows, one of ice, the other of ash. I thought then that the wolf would bow to the fire, as all must in the end. But you resist. I have never bowed easily, Ned says. Ask Robert. Robert was a man, Melisandre says, dismissive. The shadows behind him were small. The darkness we face now is not. The cold in the north is no common winter. You have felt it. I see it on you. Ned suppresses a shiver that has nothing to do with the wall's chill. I have seen enough in fire to know the north is in danger, yes. Then we are allies, she says. You and the Lord's chosen king. Stannis's mouth tightens at the phrase, but he does not contradict her. Ned's eyes flick to Jon. The men who hold Winterfell killed my son and betrayed my house, he says. They burned my home. I mean to take it back. Not as a king, as a Stark. And I mean to claim the North's allegiance as my due, Stannis says. Your boy's banners flew against the Iron Throne. His death does not unmake the oaths your lord swore to the crown. If I am king, they are mine. You were not there when he died, Ned says. You did not see what was done under guest right in a hall where my men laid down their swords. Whatever oaths they swore were broken with my boy's bones. Stannis's eyes flare. Are you saying the North is no longer part of the realm? I am saying the North will not bend knee to any man who does not first stand with it against the darkness coming over that wall, Ned says. You want our allegiance? Win it. Help us take back Winterfell from the Boltons. Help us hold it against whatever walks in the snow. Stand with us, and we will stand with you. Melisandre's gaze sharpens. You presume to bargain with a king. I presume to bargain as a man with land under his feet and sons in harm's way, Ned says. I have no patience left for crowns that weigh more than lives. Join your fires to our cold. Or go south and burn what you like while the North dies. A muscle jumps in Stannis's jaw. He looks up at the wall, at the looming ice, at the world beyond. I did not come here for diplomacy, he says. I came because the Red Woman showed me things in the flame I could not ignore. Armies of dead things. A war no throne can be sat upon if we lose. I came to fight. Winterfell is a part of that, whether I like it or not. The Boltons hold it for the Lannisters and fear only Southron favor. We will take it from them and make it a fortress against the dark. So, Ned says, we are agreed. We are aligned. Stannis allows stiffly. For now. Melisandre watches them both, speculation bright behind her eyes. The Lord's work is done by many hands, she murmurs. Some do not even know they serve. Ned meets her gaze. I serve my family, he says. If your lord finds that useful, so be it. But do not mistake me for your champion, Lady Melisandre. I burned once for another man's cause. I do not intend to do so again. The corner of her mouth curves. Fire does not ask permission, she says. Neither does winter, he replies. Their alliance is an uneasy thing, hammered together as much by necessity as by any true accord. Stannis brings soldiers, discipline, siegecraft, and a grim determination that matches Ned's own. Ned brings the North. Rumors of his return coalesce into men with spears and swords, into old lords and young ones, into free riders and crofters who come to see if the tales are true and stay when they realize they are. Jon brings the watch, or what little he can spare of it, and a mind shaped by both Stark and Black Brother. He argues fiercely that their duty is to the wall first, but he also sees what Winterfell means. If we lose Winterfell, we lose the heart of the North. Jon says one night in the war room, leaning over the painted table Stannis's men hauled all the way from Dragonstone. The castles along the wall are crumbling. The wildlings are restless. If the North's lords do not have a stronghold to rally to, they will scatter. And scatter before the cold, Ned adds. Roose Bolton is not only a traitor, he is a coward. He will not stand against the dead. He will flee, turn cloaks, carve strips from whoever is slowest. I would have him answer for our blood before he slinks to any new master. They plan. Winterfell rises in Ned's mind like a wound and a promise. He knows every inch of her walls, every twist of her underground passages, every blind corner in her courtyards. Roose may have repapered the halls with flayed skins, Ramsay may have stained the snow in the yards red with their cruelty, but the bones of the place are Stark's. We cannot simply storm the walls, Stannis says, fingers tapping on the painted table. We do not have the numbers for a full siege, and winter is closing. Every day we sit is another day the cold grows worse. Then we do not sit, Ned says. We make them come out. Boltons like to flay. Let them see enough Stark banners on the horizon and enough fires in the woods, and Ramsay will ride out to play the hero. He will not accept a challenge if he thinks the odds are even, one of the northern lords growls. He only draws his sword when the other man is already on his knees. He's his father's son. Then we do not offer him even odds, Ned says. We offer him bait. You, Jon says, frowning. He'll not be able to resist the thought of killing you again in front of your own men. Ned nods slowly. Bolton's trade in fear. My return blunts that. He will ant a spectacle to show the North that even ghosts kneel to him. So we let him think he has it. Stannis's mouth tightens. Risky. It is war, Ned says. There is no riskless path left. But if we can pull him out from behind Winterfell's walls with enough of his strength, Stannis, your men can move on the gates. The rest of ours can come in from the woods. We use their pride against them. Melisandre watches them all, fingers resting lightly on the table's edge, eyes half-lidded as if listening to something none of the rest of them can hear. You play at war as if it were a game of Sivas, she says mildly. All this planning, all this careful arranging of pieces. In the end, the board will be swept clean by the true enemy. Then we had best win quickly, Ned says, so we can turn and face him. They march south from the wall under gray skies, through forests stiff with frost. The banners that go with them are not as many as Ned would like, but they are enough. Wolves and stags and fiery hearts flutter side by side, an uneasy alliance of sigils that would have seemed impossible years ago. At the head rides Ned Stark, his scar bare to the air, his eyes fixed on the horizon where he knows Winterfell waits. He can feel the fire in him growing restless as they draw closer. Dreams come thick and hot. Visions of Winterfell's godswood with its heart tree aflame, of the great hall filled with light and shadow, of Ramsay Snow flayed on his own cross while men cheer. He does not shy from those dreams. He does not embrace them either. He wakes each morning, feels the cold on his face, and reminds himself that a Stark's job is not to feed the flames or the roots, but to keep the land between them livable. On the last night before they come within sight of Winterfell, he walks alone into the trees. The camp is a low murmur behind him. Men laughing too loudly to hide their nerves, horses stamping, armor being checked and retch-checked. Above, the aurora dances faintly, green and white ribbons across a cruelly clear sky. He finds a small clearing where the snow has not drifted too deep. There is no heart tree here, just a stand of pines, their needles black against the stars. He kneels anyway. I was yours once, he says to the silent trees, to the gods he prayed to as a boy. I tried to be. I broke no oaths lightly. When I lied, it was to protect a child. When I knelt, it was to spare lives. If I failed you, know that I did it for what seemed the lesser wrong at the time. His breath steams in the air. Somewhere distant, a wolf howls. Now another god has his hook in me, he goes on. He gave me back my life, whether to mock you or because he thought he could use me, I don't know. His fire is in my blood. I can't deny it. It helps me see lies. It helps me burn what must be burned. But I will not let him use me to burn what must endure. Winterfell, the North, my children. The pines creak softly as the wind shifts. If this is blasphemy, Ned says, closing his eyes, then I suppose I have lived long enough to speak it. I will stand tomorrow not as the sword of the old gods or the new. I will stand as Eddard Stark. Judge me by that. A warmth touches his face. He opens his eyes, startled, thinking for an instant that Melisandre has followed him with her ever-present flames. But there is no red woman here, no brazier, no torch. Instead, a faint light plays over the snow in front of him. a shimmer like sunset on frost. For a heartbeat, he sees the outline of a face in the ice, features rough but unmistakable. Hollow eyes, long nose, mouth set in a familiar, stern line. His own face carved in frost. Then the wind blows, the light goes out. It is only snow again, and the pines above him and the stars. He does not know if that was a sign, or just his own tired mind making patterns out of cold. It does not matter. The next morning, when they crest the last low rise and Winterfell comes into view, he feels no divine guidance, no hand on his shoulder. He feels only his heart pounding and the mix of joy and rage that seeing his home defiled brings. Winterfell has changed. Smoke stains mar her towers, and sections of her walls are freshly repaired in ugly, utilitarian lines. New banners hang from her battlements. The flayed man of House Bolton snapping in the wind where the direwolf once ran. The snow in her courtyards, what little Ned can see from this distance, is trodden down by the going and coming of men who do not belong there. Ramsay Bolton rides out to meet them under a pale sky, his half-smile always on the edge of a sneer. He looks younger than Ned expected, youthful, even, with long dark hair and bright eyes that glitter with something sharp and cruel. At his side rides Roose Bolton, pale as milk, his gaze flat and assessing. They bring a retinue of men in good armor, horses well-fed despite the North's hunger. The air between the two forces crackles with the unspent violence of men who have longed for this moment for years. "Lord Stark," Ramsay calls when they are close enough. He says it like a joke. "Or should I say, Lord Ghost? They tell me you lost your head. I'm surprised to see you found it again. If you look closely, you'll see it's held on better than yours," Ned replies. He forces himself to remain still, not to reach for his sword too soon. "Roose, Lord Eddard," Roose Bolton says calmly. His voice is soft, measured, as if he were commenting on the weather. "It seems the rumors were not entirely mad, then. You do walk." "Men who walk after being murdered often have business left unfinished," Ned says. "Business is business," Roose replies. The young wolf broke faith with House Fry. He chose to follow his loins instead of his oaths. Lord Walder was displeased. So were the Lannisters. They made an offer. I accepted. The North needed peace. The North needed a spine, Ned says. Instead it got you. Peacetime virtues are not much use in war. Rue, as he says. You of all men should know that, Lord Stark. You lost your head for clinging to them. Ned lets the words wash over him. He can feel the fire stirring at them, eager, licking at the edges of his control. You speak of peace achieved by killing guests at table, he says. By cutting my son down where he sat, unarmed. By slitting my wife's throat. By burning my home. Your son was a king in rebellion, Roose says. Your wife was a hostage who had outlived her usefulness. Winterfell is a castle, not a shrine. All of these things are resources in war, as you yourself once treated men and women as resources when you rode with Robert. Spare me your outrage. You only dislike the methods because they were not yours. Ramsay laughs. Listen to him, father. He'll talk you to death. Maybe that's how he means to win. Ned looks at Ramsay. The heat in his veins surges. Around Ramsay's head, the air shimmers crimson to his altered sight, thick as blood. The boy's smile is a wolf's, all teeth and no warmth. It would be so easy to let the fire have him, to reach out with a thought and set that smug face ablaze in front of both armies. He does not. You have broken guest right, Ned says. You have flayed men of the north and hung their skins in my hall. You have hunted girls in my woods. You have made Winterfell a place of fear. For that alone you would die, even if my son had never raised a banner. Ramsay only tilts his head, amused. And who will kill me? He asks. The dead man? The pretender king? He nods toward Stannis, who sits his horse stone-faced. Or the bastard in black? His gaze flicks to Jon. I hear you died once too, Snow. Perhaps we should start a club. Ghost growls, low and dangerous. The hairs on Ned's arms stand up. "You are a cruel boy," Melisandre says quietly from where she sits her horse between Stannis and Ned. "Cruel boys burn quickly." Ramsay ignores her. "You came here for a battle," he says. "Not for words. And I must confess, the thought of killing you twice, Lord Stark, has a certain appeal. So let's not spoil it with too much talk." He looks past Ned at the line of men behind him. "See how few they are, father?" he says in a stage whisper. "Not half what rode under the young wolf's banners. Not even enough to cover all our walls. And you told me ghosts were to be feared." Roose's expression does not change, but Ned sees the slight tension in his jaw. "Do not underestimate the dead," Roose says. "They have nothing left to lose." Ned lifts his sword. "For the North," he says. His voice carries, stronger than he feels. "For the Starks you butchered. For every man they trusted who betrayed them. For every flayed skin on my walls." Behind him, a roar rises from northern throats, raw and hungry. Wolves howl. Men beat sword on shield. Stannis' southern men add their deep, measured shouts, disciplined but no less fierce. The combined sound rolls over the snow like thunder. Ramsay smiles, delighted. "That's more like it," he says. He wheels his horse and rides back toward Winterfell, banners snapping behind him. The Bolton host shifts like a living thing. Gates groan open. "Now," Stannis says softly, "we see if your gamble pays, Stark." Ned nods. The battle that follows is not clean. No battle ever is. Men scream and die in snow churned to pink slush. Horses rear, eyes wild, slick with blood and sweat. Arrows fall like rain. The air fills with the clang of steel and the stink of fear. Ned rides at the front, not because he thinks himself invincible, but because men follow what they can see. The fire in him runs hot, fed by anger and the proximity of those he has judged wanting. He lets it show for a while. His sword moves faster, his arm tireless. Flames lick along the blade's edge in the thickest of the fighting, dazzling and terrifying, turning Bolton's courage to ash. Men cry out that the ghost of Winterfell has come, that the dead have risen to claim the living. "They are not wrong," Beric had once said, and the thought of the scarred man's last smile spurs Ned onward now. He cuts down men who come at him with the flayed man on their chests, knowing that some of them are small folk pressed into service, others petty lords who chose their skin over their honor. He has no time to weigh each one. Tomorrow, perhaps, he will regret the ones who did not deserve his edge. Today, he has only breath and steel. At some point in the chaos, he sees Ramsay. The bastard rides through the melee like a man at a hunt, laughing, loosing arrows at men on foot. His face flushed and joyous. There is blood on his armor and snow in his hair. He looks, Ned thinks, exactly like a boy in Winterfell's yard might have looked playing at war, if that boy had never been taught that killing matters. Their eyes meet across the torn-open snow. Ramsay grins. He spurs his horse. They crash together in the press of men. For a moment, it is only them. The dead lord and the living monster, steel ringing on steel, horses screaming as they shoulder each other. The world narrows to Ramsay's bright eyes and the line of his smile, to the way his sword darts and flickers, fast and cruel. "You should have stayed dead," Ramsay pants between blows. "The North was more fun without you." "The North was never yours to play with," Ned grits out. He parries a thrust aimed at his throat, feeling the jolt up his arm, and kicks out. His boot catches Ramsay's knee. The younger man yelps as his horse stumbles. For a heartbeat, Ramsay is off balance. The fire in Ned surges. He could let it go. He could send a stream of flame from his hand and watch Ramsay scream as he burns, his flesh blackening and cracking, his laughter turning to shrieks. It would be fitting. It would be easy. He does not. Instead, he uses the heat as he has learned to sharpen, not to consume. His sword moves almost of its own accord, guided by every lesson Roderick Castle ever drilled into him. Every instinct honed in real battle. The blade bites. Ramsay's eyes widen. He looks down at the steel jutting from his chest as if it is an unexpected guest at his own feast. Blood wells, bright red, steaming in the cold. That wasn't the way I pictured it, he says almost sadly. Most men die differently than they imagine, Ned says. He pulls the sword free. Ramsay sways in the saddle, then tumbles, hitting the snow hard. For a moment he twitches, making small, shocked sounds. Then he is still. Roose Bolton sees. Across the field, the Lord of the Dreadfort watches his bastard son bleed into Winterfell's snow and makes his choice with the same cold calculation he has always shown. He turns his horse. He means to run. Ned sees that too. He spurs his own mount, cutting through the chaos, ignoring the cries and clashes around him. The heat in his blood flares, eager. He will not let this one slip away. Not Roose, not the measuring man whose fingers have been on the North's throat for too long. Roose glances back once, sees Ned closing, and digs his heels into his horse's flanks, aiming for the partially opened gates. He does not make it. A shaft springs from nowhere, flying true. It takes Roose through the throat with the kind of clean efficiency only long practice gives. The Lord of Bolton stiffens, jerks, and topples from the saddle, hitting the ground in a heap, blood spurting vivid against the snow. Ned pulls up short, breathing hard, turning to see where the arrow came from. On the rise overlooking the field stands a lone archer, bow still half raised. His hair is wind-tangled, his cloak a patchwork of browns and greens. At his feet sits a striped cat, tail flicking. "You stole my kill," Lem Lemoncloak calls from another part of the field, wiping his sword on a Bolton cloak. "Again. Couldn't risk him slipping your grip?" Angwy calls back, grinning. "Man like that deserves a quick death." Before someone thinks to take the skin off him, Ned meets Angwy's eyes. The archer inclines his head fractionally, almost in salute. "Old debts," Angwy calls. "Consider them paid, my lord." Ned nods. He rides to where Roose Bolton lies gurgling in the snow, the arrow still in his throat. The man's pale eyes flit to him, pupils wide, more bewildered than anything. Ned dismounts. He kneels. He puts one hand on Roose's chest, feeling the flutter of a heart that has orchestrated so much cold cruelty. The fire in him stirs, rising toward his palm. "You think I fear your judgment, Stark?" Roose rasps around the arrow. Blood bubbles on his lips. "I did what I had to. The North needed men who would do the ugly work. You did what served you," Ned says quietly. "You cut throats in the dark and called it necessity. You broke bread with the men you meant to kill. You flayed those who trusted you. I will not pretend to know what the gods make of that. But as Eddard Stark of Winterfell, as a man who still remembers what guest right means, I find you wanting." Roose's eyes flash with a thin, brittle arrogance. "Your son was a boy playing at war," he whispers. "You raised him soft. The world." The fire rises. Ned lets it. It flows through his palm into Roose Bolton's chest. There is no visible flame, no dramatic flare, just heat, sudden and intense, focused like the heart of a forge. Roose's pupils dilate. For the first time, a real expression crosses his face. Fear. "What?" he starts. Then he is gone. Ned lifts his hand. There is no mark on Roose's skin, no sign of burning. The arrow still juts from his throat, but the body beneath his fingers is empty in a way Ned can feel, as if whatever made Roose has been seared clean away. He stands, suddenly impossibly weary. The battle shudders around them, then breaks. With both Boltons dead, their men's courage collapses. Some throw down their weapons and kneel. Others try to run and are cut down or ridden down. A few fight on, too stubborn or too stupid to understand that the day is lost. By the time the gates of Winterfell are flung wide to them, the snow is churned and red and the air reeks of sweat, iron, and the high, hot stink of open bodies. Ned breathes it in like a man who has stood oversee many a grim aftermath. He has seen Winterfell's yard stained with blood before, when Robert's men trained, when deserters from the Night's Watch were executed, when wolves culled herds. But this is more. This is a cleansing by fire and steel of a stain that should never have been made. He walks through the gates first. The courtyard feels smaller than it did in his memory, as if the weight of what has happened here in his absence has pressed the stones inward. New structures have been built, ugly and crude. A timbered frame where skins once hung to dry, a rough pen stained dark. He can feel the ghosts of what was done here. His fire burns hotter, responding to it. "Father?" A voice says from the steps of the keep. For an instant, his heart stops. Sansa stands there, wrapped in furs far too large for her. Her hair dyed a dull brown, her face thinner than he remembers. Beside her stands a tall, gaunt man with the lineaments of the North and the haunted eyes of one who has seen too many years in too few. Ned's breath leaves him in a rush. "Sansa," he says. Her eyes fill with tears. "They told me you—" She starts, then laughs through the tears, a wild sound. "Everyone keeps telling me you're dead. First you, then... She cannot finish. She takes the steps carefully, as if afraid they will vanish. And then she is in his arms, her face pressed against his chest. She smells of smoke and soap and the faintest hint of roses. Ned holds her as if the world hinges on it. "You're safe now," he says into her hair, though he knows it is a promise he can never fully keep, not with the eyes in the dark beyond the wall. Not with the fire in his veins and the gods' games still being played. "You're home. Home. It is a bro. Can home. It is a Winterfell that has been burned, defiled, and reclaimed. It is a North with scars that will never fully heal. It is a world in which he is a man torn between roots and flame, between the gods he grew up with and the god who dragged him back from the grave. But standing there in the courtyard of Winterfell, his daughter in his arms, his son somewhere behind him, his people watching, Ned Stark feels something settle in him. He will be their judge, not the old gods, not R'hllor, not some distant kings. He will burn what must be burned. Treachery, cruelty, the rot that has taken hold in lords' halls and kings' courts. He will spare what must be spared. Children, small folk, men who chose wrong and can still choose right. He will stand between ice and fire as long as his borrowed life holds. And when the cold that he has seen in the flames comes down from the north in earnest, when blue eyes march and the wall's strength is truly tested, he will be there on Winterfell's walls, sword in hand, fire in his blood, roots under his feet. The world may belong to gods and prophecies, to princes that were promised and shadows born of flame. But the judgment that falls on men in the end, Ned Stark thinks, is carried out by other men. He intends to make that judgment a burning one.